Imagine for a second that there's a secret hidden inside you, something so powerful it could completely change the way you live your life. It's not something you find in a book. It's not a technique someone teaches you in a course, nor is it something you can buy with money. This secret is already with you, beating deep within your being, waiting for you to discover it. Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant psychologists who ever lived, dedicated his life to exploring this mystery of the human soul. And what he found isn't just fascinating, it's transformative. Today, I want to take you by the hand through his ideas, because if you want to grow, if you want to feel truly free, there's something you need to learn. Letting go without fear is the path to your freedom. Are you ready to take that step? Let me start with something that will hook you right away. Have you ever felt trapped? Maybe not physically, but in your mind, in your emotions, in a relationship, in a job, or even in a version of yourself you no longer recognize? That feeling of being stuck, like something weighs on your chest, isn't a coincidence. Jung would say it's your unconscious screaming at you, begging you to pay attention. He discovered that inside each of us there's an entire world, an inner universe full of symbols, emotions, and instincts that guide us, even if we don't always know how to listen. And here's the first truth I want you to etch into your mind. You can't grow if you cling to what no longer belongs to you. Think about this. How many times have you stayed in a relationship, a friendship, or a habit just because you were afraid of what would happen if you let it go? I remember once, years ago, when I was trapped in a friendship that drained me. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. Laughter, plans, good times. But every time I left those conversations, I felt empty, like someone had turned off a part of me. Has something like that ever happened to you? Jung would call it a sign of your shadow, that part of you try to ignore, but that keeps showing up in the people and situations around you. He said the shadow isn't your enemy, it's a messenger. And that message is clear. If you want to move forward, you have to let go. But wait, I'm not telling you to run out and cut everything out of your life overnight. This isn't about acting on impulse. Jung taught us that true growth comes from understanding why you hold on, what you're afraid of losing. Is it security, love, or maybe that idea of who you think you should be? Imagine your life is like a backpack. Over time, you fill it with things, experiences, relationships, beliefs. Some give you strength, but others are just dead weight. And here's the problem. The more you carry, the less you can move. Jung would say that letting go isn't losing, it's freeing yourself to walk toward who you really are. Let's talk about the shadow a bit more because this is key. Jung said we all have a shadow, that part of us we hide from the world. It's those flaws you don't want to admit, those fears that embarrass you, those emotions you repress because they don't fit the image you want to show. Sound familiar? Maybe you're someone who's always smiling, but deep down feels a sadness you can't explain. Or maybe you get angrier than you'd like, but cover it up with excuses. The shadow doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. On the contrary, it gets stronger, sneaking into your decisions, your fights, those times you explode at someone and then wonder, why did I do that? I'll give you a concrete example. Recently, I talked to a friend who always ended up in relationships where she felt she wasn't enough. Every time she started dating someone, things went well at first, but then came that feeling that she had to change, that she had to try harder to be worthy of love. You know what she discovered after reflecting with Jung's ideas? Those partners were a reflection of her own shadow, that part of her that didn't accept herself. The problem wasn't outside, it was inside. And when she started working on integrating that shadow, accepting herself as she was, something incredible happened. She stopped attracting people who made her feel small. Don't you think that's powerful? So ask yourself this: what are you reflecting in your life right now? If you look around and see chaos, drama, or people who exhaust you, Jung would say it's not bad luck. It's your unconscious asking you to look within. And here comes the first big step I want you to take today. Identify something you're holding on to out of fear. It could be a relationship that no longer fills you, a job that dims you, or even a belief about yourself that limits you. You don't have to let it go yet, just recognize it, because the simple act of seeing it already starts to change things. Now let's talk about why letting go is so hard. Jung said we live trapped between two worlds, the conscious, which we control and understand, and the unconscious, which is like a deep ocean full of mysteries. That ocean doesn't speak with words. It communicates with feelings, dreams, intuitions. Have you ever had a gut feeling you couldn't explain? Like when you meet someone and something inside says, be careful, even though everything seems perfect? That's your unconscious talking. But most of us have learned to ignore it, to follow logic, safety, what others expect of us. Think of a fork in the road. One path is lit, full of people, and looks easy. The other is dark, lonely, and scary. Which do you choose? Most go for the first because it's comfortable. But Jung would say true growth lies in the second, in that place where you face the unknown. Before we move on, I'll take a moment to tell you my book is now available. It's full of tips and techniques to help you overcome emotional blocks and love yourself more. Find the link in the description and in the pinned comment. Let's continue. Letting go is like taking that dark path. It's scary because you don't know what's on the other side. But it's also where you find your freedom. And what if I told you that on the other side of that fear is the most authentic version of yourself? Isn't it worth trying? Let me tell you something personal. There was a time in my life when I clung to a dream that wasn't mine anymore. I wanted to be successful by other people's standards, a good job, a perfect life. But every step I took in that direction made me feel more lost. Until one day, almost by accident, I read Jung and realized I was living a lie. My unconscious had been screaming it at me through weird dreams, through that anxiety that wouldn't go away. When I let go of that idea of who I should be, I felt immense relief. And little by little, my life started aligning with what I really wanted. What are you holding on to that's no longer yours? Here's the trick. Letting go isn't just about releasing external things. It's also about letting go of the mask you wear. Jung talked about the persona, that facade we use to fit into the world. Are you the strong one who never cries? The one who always says yes, even when exhausted? Those masks protect you, but they also trap you. And when you let them go, when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, authentic, something magical happens. You start connecting with the right people, those who see you for who you are, not who you pretend to be. I'll pause here and ask you something direct. What mask are you wearing right now? Think about it for a second. Maybe it's one you put on years ago when you decided you had to be a certain way to be accepted. What would happen if you let it drop? I'm not telling you to do it right now, but imagine how it would feel. Jung would say that's the start of your freedom, because you can't grow if you're trapped in a fake version of yourself. And here's another truth Jung left us. Your energy is sacred. Every time you let someone or something drain it, you're telling your unconscious you're not worth enough. How many times have you stayed silent when you wanted to speak? How many times have you stayed in a situation that exhausted you just to avoid looking bad? Protecting your energy isn't selfishness, it's survival. It's the first act of love you owe yourself. And when you start doing it, the universe notices. Things start to change. The people who drained you drift away, and the ones who lift you up appear like magic. So what are you going to let go of today? You don't have to decide right now, but start thinking about it. Because this is just the beginning. In the second part, we'll dive even deeper into how to integrate your shadow, how to listen to your intuition, and how to transform your life from within. This isn't just a video. It's an invitation to change your reality. Stay with me, because what's coming is even more powerful. Good. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you is resonating. We've already talked about how letting go is the first step to growing, how your shadow and unconscious are trying to guide you toward a more authentic life. But now we're going to go deeper, because Carl Jung didn't just give us tools to understand the problem. He showed us how to shape our lives from the core. Get ready, because this second part is where everything starts to click, where you'll feel you can take control and gain that freedom you've been seeking. Ready to find out how? Let's begin with something Jung considered essential: integrating your shadow. I already told you the shadow is that part of you hide. But here's the detail. It's not just your flaws, it's also your dormant potential. Those things you don't dare show because they don't fit what the world expects of you. Imagine you have a safe inside your mind. Inside are your fears, Yes, but also your biggest dreams, your creativity, your strength. What would happen if you opened that safe? Jung would say that's the moment you start truly living. I'll give you an example that might ring a bell. Have you ever met someone who drives you crazy? Say a person who's always criticizing or seems selfish, and you think, I can't stand that? Jung would say it's not a coincidence that person is in your life. What bothers you about them is a reflection of something you haven't accepted in yourself. Maybe you criticize because deep down you demand too much of yourself. Or maybe their selfishness annoys you because you don't let yourself put your needs first. This isn't to blame you, it's to free you. When you start seeing those flaws as parts of your shadow, you can work on them. And when you integrate them, they stop controlling you. I remember once this happened to me with a coworker. He was always competing, bragging, and I got so irritated I avoided talking to him. Until one day, reading Jung, I asked myself, what's this showing me about myself? And I realized something uncomfortable. I wanted to stand out too, but I forbade myself because I thought it was wrong to be ambitious. When I accepted that part of me, not only did I stop hating that coworker, but I started using my own ambition in a healthy way. Isn't it amazing how this works? So let's do a quick exercise. Think of someone who gets under your skin. What bothers you most about them? Now take a deep breath and ask yourself, where is that in me? You don't have to solve it today, but start looking. Because when you integrate your shadow, you don't just heal your relationships. You unlock an energy you didn't even know you had. Jung said this process, which he called individuation, is the path to your authentic self. And trust me, it's worth every second. Now let's talk about your intuition, because this is another gift from the unconscious Jung wanted you to use. How many times have you felt something wasn't right but ignored it because it didn't make sense? Maybe it was a relationship that seemed perfect, but something inside said, this isn't for you. Or an important decision, like a job change everyone cheered for, but it left you restless. Jung said the unconscious doesn't lie. It's like an internal radar detecting what your conscious mind can't see. But to hear it, you have to trust it. Let me tell you a story. A couple of years ago, I had the chance to move to another city for a job that sounded incredible. Everyone told me, it's your big opportunity. But every time I thought about it, I felt a tightness in my chest, like my body was saying no. It didn't make sense. The pay was good. The place was great. But in the end, I followed my intuition and said no. Months later, I found out the company went bankrupt. Coincidence? Jung would say no. He called it synchronicity. That moment when the universe and your unconscious align to guide you. When was the last time you ignored your intuition? And what happened after? Here's a practical tip. The next time you have to make a decision, close your eyes for a second and listen to your body. Do you feel peace or tension? Your unconscious doesn't use words, but your body does speak. And when you start trusting that voice, you realize letting go isn't so terrifying. Because you're not letting go blindly, you're letting go to make room for what truly belongs to you. And speaking of letting go, let's make one thing clear. It's not about giving up. Jung didn't want you to become someone passive who lets life pass by. Letting go is an act of power. It's choosing what deserves your energy and what doesn't. Imagine your life as a garden. If you let the weeds grow, there won't be space for flowers. Letting go is pulling those weeds, not because you hate your garden, but because you want it to bloom. What weeds are you letting grow right now? Maybe it's a toxic relationship, a fear that paralyzes you, or a goal that no longer excites you. Pull it out. Not tomorrow, not next week. Start today. I'll be honest with you. This process isn't easy. There will be moments when you doubt, when fear makes you want to turn back. But Jung said there's no awakening of consciousness without pain. That pain isn't a punishment, it's a cleansing. It's like when you tear a muscle at the gym. It hurts, but it's a sign you're growing. And on the other side of that pain is freedom. A life where you don't feel trapped, where you can breathe deeply and say, this is me. You know what happens when you start letting go and living from your authenticity? The universe responds. Jung talked about synchronicity as that magical dance between your inner and outer worlds. When you align with your truth, things start to fall into place. You meet the right people at the exact right time. You find opportunities that seem tailor-made for you. It's not luck, it's consequence. Because when you live from your essence, the universe has no choice but to reflect it. Think about this. How many times have you felt like you're swimming against the current? Relationships that don't move forward, projects that stall, days when everything feels uphill. Jung would say that's a sign you're out of alignment. But when you let go of what doesn't resonate with you, when you dare to be who you are without masks, the current changes. You stop fighting and start flowing. Wouldn't you love to feel that? I'll close with something powerful. Jung believed the purpose of life isn't to be happy all the time, but to find wholeness. And that wholeness comes from connecting with your true self, from letting go of the chains tying you to a life that doesn't represent you. So today, I invite you to take a step. You don't have to change everything at once, but choose one thing, one single thing you no longer want to carry. It could be a resentment, an expectation, a relationship. Let it go. And when you do, notice how you feel. Because that small act of courage is the beginning of everything. Now here's what I want you to do after this video. If something I said touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below and tell me, what are you letting go of today? What's holding you back from growing? Your words don't just inspire me, they inspire everyone in this community. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Turn on the bell, because every week I bring messages like this so we can build a more authentic life together. This isn't just a video, it's a movement and you're part of it. Thank you for being here, for listening, for daring to look within. I'll see you in the next video. Remember, the change starts with you. I'll be waiting.